And now for my post-match analysis. After every game of diplomacy I play, actually after almost every game I play in general for that matter, I take a moment to think through what I learned. Win or lose, what did I learn? What could I do better? What should I keep doing? And I think that this analysis is how, over my lifetime, I've become such a formidable player of games. And I think that the ability to reflect and self-analyze and self-criticize is invaluable at someone who seeks to become good at anything. I'm going to apply that here, and I'm going to do so openly in my vlog to show how I do this, and maybe you, the viewer, will learn something from me and how I go about this kind of analysis. In a philosophy book that I was reading recently, the philosopher talked about approaching people who come to see him for advice. And this philosopher doubles as a counselor, like a psychological counselor or a therapist, a real person. And he said that he presents the people coming to him with their troubles with a triangle with 3 sides. And on the 3 sides are that bad person, and poor me, and from now on. And the idea behind this triangle is that the things that the patient or whatever, the person who's coming for advice, could talk about in their counseling session is going to be one of those 3 things. And most people, upon seeing their choices, think about what they want to say and realize that maybe talking about the other, that bad person or poor me, is not really a productive use of their time speaking with the philosopher. That they on their own, just seeing this, realize that, hey, from now on, this is what I want to do. That would be helpful, that's something they can do differently in the future and maybe have a better outcome or solve some of their problems. And I think that form of thinking is very beneficial to a player who seeks to improve at games. So I have coached many diplomacy players, and when they do their post-game analysis, a lot of times their analysis falls into those first 2 sides of the triangle. That bad person. They point to other players in the game and blame those players for the outcome that happened, especially when they lose. I guess that's the most important thing to say. If they have played a game and lost, they blame something about the other players. Well, you don't control the other players, so there's pretty much nothing you can do about that. Or in a game like diplomacy, if the other players have done something that is not to your liking, then maybe you could have persuaded them to do differently, and that's what you got to think about. Or they go to the other side of the triangle and they say, oh, their analysis is poor me. Oh, these things happened and it didn't work out like I thought. And you just can't win them all. And sometimes it's all luck. Players, it just was bad luck. I really don't like that attitude. I think players turn to excuses and luck and things like that, when there are things you could have done differently. So I'm going to apply that here, and I'm not going to say that bad person, and I'm not going to say, oh, poor me. I'm going to think about what I can do in the future from now on. And to figure that out, I want to look backwards from the end of the game, a couple of turns, and think on what I could have done differently that I think would have resulted in a better outcome for me. So in the end of the game, I was able to approach a solo win, but never came within a move of doing so. My analysis is usually that a well-played game of diplomacy, a match where you were truly a successful player, the game came down to a move or two where if you had made the right move, guessed correctly, you would win, and with the wrong guess, you don't make it. But when it comes down to a guess and you just don't make the right guess, that's That's pretty dang close. I never had such a turn. A turn did not come by where I was guessing for the win. I thought I was headed in that direction, but I never reached it. So in the last turn, obviously, I was betrayed by Italy, who decided not to throw me the game. And I often say that a player can only win a match of diplomacy if someone throws the game on purpose or the defending players make an error. Usually it has to be a grievous error for someone to win. So I did not achieve that thing that I say that I need, which is a player to throw the game. And after Italy told me that it became that during his negotiations with Austria, he realized that it would be possible for Austria to support him into Tunis while keeping Naples open for a build, and then with those 2 units and a critical spot on the stalemate line, it'd be much, much harder to eliminate him from the draw. And that this was especially tempting to him because he knew from what his discussions with me that I was not going to be supporting my army in Tunis. And that's true. I did give that away, or I didn't directly state it, but it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to do that from our conversation. And I was very frank with Italy about this because I thought Italy was just trying to throw the game. So here's what I could have done differently. I could have lied to Italy and said that I was going to support Hold Tunis. It wouldn't have amounted to anything because if Italy was eliminated, then that would be that. There would be no consequences to the lie. Especially if Austria took him out, which is what I thought Austria might do instead of cooperating with Italy. That might have worked. And in hindsight, I think it was a mistake for me to give away that information to Italy because Italy ended up making the decision that he made. In my own advice, the top 5 reasons you get backstabbed, one of those reasons is loose lips. In my own advice, I say, don't give away more information than is necessary because other players will use it against you almost without exception. And that happened here. I didn't follow my advice. And so in the future, I'm going to try to follow my advice a little bit better and only tell players exactly as much information as necessary for them to do as I like and no more. I also appreciate that that lying in that situation just to deter Italy from thinking that he had any chance of making it into Tunis could have made a difference, and that might have been a good time to lie. I don't lie often in diplomacy matches, which is why I don't think that's why I thought of it in that moment. But in hindsight, lying would have been good, and during the match, I did lie to players here and there who were on the brink of death, or I lied to them on the same turn that they got eliminated so that there was really nothing they could do about it. And I could have done the same to Italy there. So I think that technique that I use of telling the truth to players as much as possible, but being willing to lie through my teeth if I think they're about to be eliminated, I think that was very effective. And I should use that consistently, including during the end game, even when I thought the player was trying to throw. I think that might have worked. Another thing that I could have done differently is I could have working backwards a little bit. On a prior turn, I used my fleet at North Sea to cover English Channel. I made a move where I moved English Channel to Mid-Atlantic Ocean and North Sea to English Channel, anticipating that Russia was going to move his fleet in Irish Sea to Mid-Atlantic Ocean. My moveset was mostly built around that idea. When I hedged a little bit, I hedged and I thought, well, Russia might not move to Mid-Atlantic Ocean. Russia could try to outplay me and move to English Channel. So I should cover English Channel with North Sea. And Russia's really, really likely to just give me Norway anyway. At that time, I thought that Russia was just throwing centers to me in the north on purpose. I misread the situation, and so I could have supported my attack on Norway with North Sea, and that attack would have worked, and Russia would have been down a unit, and I would have had another build available and a fleet in better position to attack future targets. And that move I made with North Sea to English Channel was wasted because English Channel bounced to Mid-Atlantic Ocean just as I predicted. So a teaching that I commonly share with other players, as I tell them that to win at diplomacy, you have to take risks. You have to take big risks. And in order to take those risks intelligently, I say, make a specific prediction of what you think the other player's moves are, a precise prediction of each unit, and then choose moves that totally counter that other player's moveset. And sometimes this goes wrong, and you don't guess right. But when you do guess right, the payoff is huge, and players are much more predictable than they like to think. So here, I had a read that Russia was going to move to Mid-Atlantic Ocean, and that read was correct. And if I had just bet a little harder on that read by making a supported move to Norway, then the situation I would have had the turns later with Italy would have been very different, because I would have had more time in the endgame situation. As you may remember from my previous blog entries, I depended so much on Italian help because the time I needed, the tempo, to set up the stalemate line around Tunis and stalemate my home centers and pump out all the fleets that were necessary from Kiel to surround and destroy the Russian fleet. All that had to happen almost simultaneously because of the short time frame that I had, and that's why I decided I needed Italy to help me. But if I had come into that endgame with a stronger hand, where I'd already captured Norway, that would mean that my units headed towards the Russian fleet, they would have had a head start, and I would not have depended on capturing Liverpool to get the needed builds. I'm sorry, that's a mistake. I was going to capture Norway anyway, but the way the match actually played out is that I had to use North Sea to support my move into Norway on a later turn. So that cost me a move from two pieces. I had to remove my piece to Norway to a second time after the failed move, and I had to use North Sea for support when I could have moved it somewhere. I don't know how much of a difference that would have made, but I think it would have made some difference. It is something I could have done differently. I certainly thought about making those moves. I thought about doing it and chickened out. And I think if I had been a little braver, I might have been able to solo win without Italy's help. So, working backwards, I could have done better to manipulate Italy into helping me, or to give Italy little choice but to do that. Or I could have played a little bit more bravely against the Russian earlier in the match, and that wouldn't have made me so dependent on Italy. Working backwards further from that, I think I did everything pretty much right up until that point, and I think I should continue, because I was on the brink early on as Germany. I was very close to being eliminated, I think. And I managed to turn that around, eliminate other players, and get in a position to solo win. And I did that by doing everything I could to charm and cooperate with the other players, to give them a reason to help me, a reason to help me capture centers, a reason for me to stick around. I lied almost not at all. The only times I lied were with players who were just about to be eliminated, or that I backstabbed and they had no way to recover from it. One of my common teachings is, hey, don't backstab somebody who can take revenge against you later. You got to backstab somebody and crush them, or backstab to go for the win. Otherwise, backstabbing over petty stuff, that's not that great. And I think that served me well. I think I got players on my side. They wanted to work with me, and I was able to grow big, and I had good trust. And by the time I was ready to go for a solo win, the other players weren't upset about it. They kind of saw it coming, but they accepted it and didn't try to get revenge against me for taking a solo or anything bitter like that. They simply tried to put a stop to it in the way that they saw fit. Earlier in the match, I maybe could have done something differently to not get myself attacked so quickly, which is I learned, this is probably true, I learned from the Austrian player that as the players were trying to figure out who to attack, the fact that England and I had so clearly initiated our fight against France by lying gave them an excuse to join together against me, and probably against England as well, but I was in the way, right? If Austria and Russia need someone to attack, they're not going to really be able to attack England that easily, so they came after me. So that's what something Austria told me, and that may be true. I have to think about that. I'm not sure I believe that I should play that situation differently. Looking at the exact board from the opening moves, if the French player had any hint that we were going to attack, the French player could have done absolutely miserable moves that would have maybe made it even impossible to attack the French player successfully later. And I learned afterwards the French player indeed came very close to entering those moves, but it was only because of our incredible lying, maybe mostly mine, I don't know, that he didn't, and we got away with it. So I think that although lying may have cost me something in terms of making me seem like a target, I think that the situation might have been just as bad if I had not lied. So I don't think that trying to lie to get into a favorable position in 1901 is something that I should learn a negative lesson from. I think many diplomacy players view 1901 as a time when you can kind of freely lie to people, and it's not that crazy, it's not that much of a backstab. You learn where the real alliances are in the subsequent turns, and many players are indeed fairly forgiving of 1901 backstabs, at least experienced players. So I don't think there's a lesson to be learned there. And it worked out for me later, so I think that's all right. In the end, this match is about what I expected from a high-level diplomacy game. Most diplomacy matches end at draws. Probably, to my knowledge, a little over 50% of your typical diplomacy matches end in draws. And in my experience at a high level of play, that draw rate is even higher. If you're familiar with chess, you know that well-played chess games typically end in stalemates. And I think the same is true with diplomacy, that high level, most games are going to end in draws. But as far as my ability to contend with good players, about a year and a half ago, when I entered in the online diplomacy championship for 2019, I entered that championship without really without having an assessment of my own skills as a press player. I had played press diplomacy for years, but not entered into tournaments and things like that. The fact that I got really, really good results in the preliminary rounds, rather easily actually, getting backstabbed, almost not at all even, and getting close to solo wins almost every match. That made me realize going into the final round that, okay, I am a very good online diplomacy player. The proof is in the pudding. I am. And the final round is still going on at the time of this recording, so I won't talk about it. It's an anonymous game, etc. But needless to say, I have been a contender in that match, and I know that I earned my place in the finals there, for sure. And playing in this Media Wars match against experienced and prominent players, holding my own, recovering from a bad situation, and being the one player who came close to a solo win. I'm not close. The one player who had the possibility on the horizon of getting to a solo win. Being that player, I assess myself as a formidable online press diplomacy player. I don't yet count myself among the true titans of the game, but perhaps with more years and more experience, I will change these very close almost wins into actual wins more often, and I will be able to one day think of myself as one of the best players. And I think that these assessments, self-assessments, post-mortem of the game are how I will get there. You've made it all the way to the end of this vlog, and you must be an absolute glutton for diplomacy content, or else you're one of my very serious fans. And so I appreciate you making it all the way this far. I have no idea how many people are actually going to get all the way here, but at the time I published my first online journal, I thought maybe 5 people in the whole world would read it, and it turned out to be one of the most popular things I ever published. So it's possible that this could be a popular content among diplomacy players. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I certainly enjoyed making these recordings, and maybe give me your feedback. Give me your feedback. Do you think I should make another journal in the future? Have you read my other journals? If I make another journal of a match, should it be a written one, a video one? What do you think was better? What did you like? What did you not like? Please give your feedback. I really appreciate it. And I hope you learned something that you can put to use in your diplomacy matches in the future.